I never thought I'd be the kind of person to question my family. Growing up, we were the picture-perfect household that everyone in our neighborhood envied. My parents, Richard and Margaret, had been married for 35 years, and they seemed to embody what true love looked like. My older brother Daniel was the golden child, a successful attorney who could do no wrong in our parents' eyes, while my younger sister Emily was the free spirit, the artist who brought color and laughter into every room she entered. And then there was me, Charlotte, the middle child, who always tried to keep everyone happy, the mediator, the one who smoothed over conflicts and made sure family dinners went off without a hitch. I genuinely believed we were blessed, that our family bond was unbreakable, forged through years of shared memories, inside jokes, and unwavering support for one another. But sometimes the families we trust the most are the ones hiding the darkest secrets, and sometimes a single discovery can shatter everything you thought you knew about the people you love. It started on a Thursday afternoon in late September, one of those perfect autumn days when the air smells like cinnamon and possibilities. I had taken the day off from my job as a high school English teacher to help my mother prepare for my father's 60th birthday party that weekend. The celebration was going to be massive, with over 100 guests, catered food, a live band, and a photo slideshow I'd spent weeks compiling. My mother had been stressed about every detail, obsessing over flower arrangements and seating charts, so I'd volunteered to come over and help with whatever she needed. When I arrived at my childhood home, that beautiful colonial with the white picket fence and the rose garden, my mother tended with religious devotion. She wasn't there. Her car was in the driveway. Her purse was on the kitchen counter. But the house was empty. I called out for her, checked every room, even went down to the basement thinking she might be sorting through old decorations. Nothing. It was odd, but not alarming. Maybe she'd gone for a walk with a neighbor or run next door to borrow something. I decided to make myself useful while I waited, so I headed up to the attic where my mother had mentioned storing some old photo albums she wanted to include in the slideshow. The attic was a time capsule of our family history. Dusty boxes labeled with years, old furniture covered in sheets, Christmas decorations stacked in corners, and the musty smell of memories preserved in cardboard and plastic. I found the boxes of photos easily enough, but as I was pulling one down from a high shelf, another box tumbled down with it, spilling its contents across the wooden floor. Papers scattered everywhere, old documents, letters, and manila folders that looked official and important. I started gathering them up, not really paying attention to what they were, just trying to clean up the mess I'd accidentally created. But then I saw it, a folder labeled Clearwater Medical Center, with a date from 28 years ago, the year I was born. My hands trembled as I opened the folder, curiosity overwhelming any sense that I might be invading my parents' privacy. Inside were medical records, bills from the hospital, and a birth certificate. But it wasn't mine. The baby's name was listed as Emma Grace Anderson, born on March 15th, the exact same day as my birthday, to parents listed as Margaret and Richard Anderson, my parents. But my name is Charlotte Ann Anderson, and I'd seen my birth certificate before. I'd needed it for my passport years ago. This didn't make sense. Why would there be records for a baby named Emma Grace, born on the same day as me to my parents? My mind raced through possibilities. Maybe I'd been named Emma initially and they changed it. But that seemed unlikely. Maybe this was a clerical error. But these were official documents, multiple pages of them, consistent and detailed. I dug deeper into the box, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. There were more documents underneath. Adoption papers, legal documents with official seals and signatures, records of a private adoption, facilitated through an agency I'd never heard of. And there, in black and white, was the truth that would unravel everything I thought I knew about my life. I wasn't Margaret and Richard's biological daughter. Emma Grace Anderson had died 2 days after birth, due to complications from a congenital heart defect. And I, Charlotte, had been adopted through a private agency when I was just 3 days old, right around the same time Emma Grace passed away. My parents had lost their biological daughter and immediately replaced her with me, giving me a different name, but never, not once in 28 years, telling me the truth. I sat on that dusty attic floor for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes. Papers spread around me like evidence at a crime scene. My entire identity felt like it was crumbling. Every childhood memory was suddenly tinged with deception. Every time my mother had held me and called me her baby girl, was she seeing Emma Grace's face? Every time my father had told me I had my mother's eyes, was he lying? Or had he just convinced himself it was true? And Daniel and Emily, did they know? Were they in on this massive secret, or were they just as much in the dark as I'd been? The questions multiplied faster than I could process them, each one more painful than the last. Who were my biological parents? Why had I been given up for adoption? Did my birth mother ever think about me? Did she wonder where I was, what I looked like, if I was happy? And most crushing of all, why hadn't Richard and Margaret trusted me enough to tell me the truth? I heard the front door open downstairs, my mother's voice calling out my name, cheerful and unsuspecting. For a moment, I considered hiding the documents, pretending I'd never seen them, going back downstairs and continuing to live in the comfortable lie I'd existed in for 28 years. But I couldn't. Something inside me had fundamentally shifted. I couldn't unknow what I now knew, couldn't pretend I hadn't seen proof of the elaborate deception my parents had maintained my entire life. I grabbed the folder, left the scattered papers where they lay, and walked down the attic stairs on legs that felt like they might give out at any moment. My mother was in the kitchen, putting away groceries, humming some tune from the radio. She looked up when I entered, her smile bright and genuine, completely unaware that I was holding the grenade that would blow up our family. "There you are, sweetie. I was just at the store getting some last-minute things for the party. Did you find the photo albums?" she asked, putting milk in the refrigerator. I held up the folder instead of answering. Her eyes landed on it, and I watched in real time as the color drained from her face. She knew exactly what I was holding, exactly what I'd discovered. The smile vanished, replaced by an expression of pure panic and something else I couldn't quite identify. Guilt, maybe. Or fear. Probably both. "Charlotte, where did you find that?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper, her hand gripping the refrigerator door so tightly, her knuckles turned white. "The attic. It fell out when I was getting the photo albums you asked me to find." "So it's true? I'm adopted? And you named me after a daughter you lost, and never thought to mention that. Oh, by the way, I'm not actually related to any of you by blood." My voice was rising, all the shock and hurt crystallizing into anger. My mother closed the refrigerator and moved toward me, hands outstretched like she was approaching a wounded animal. "Sweetheart, please, let me explain. It's not what you think. We were going to tell you. We always planned to tell you. But the right time never came. And then so much time had passed, and we just thought—" "You thought what? That I'd never find out? That you could just lie to me forever and I'd never question it?" I interrupted, my hands shaking as I clutched the folder. "You lost a daughter, and I'm sorry. I can't imagine that pain. But you can't just replace a child like you're returning a sweater to the store and exchanging it for a different one. Did you even want me? Or did you just want Emma Grace back? The words came out harsher than I'd intended, but I couldn't stop them. 28 years of what I'd thought was unconditional love now felt conditional, transactional, built on a foundation of lies. My mother's eyes filled with tears, and for the first time in my life I didn't feel the instinct to comfort her. Of course we wanted you, Charlotte. We loved you from the moment we saw you. Yes, we were grieving Emma Grace. We were devastated, but when the agency told us about you, about a baby girl who needed a home, it felt like fate. It felt like we were meant to be your parents. But you never told me. 28 years, Mom. 28 years of lying to me every single day. Every time someone said I looked like you or acted like Dad, you just went along with it. Do you have any idea how that feels? To find out your entire life is based on a lie? I was pacing now, unable to stand still, my mind racing faster than my feet could move. My mother reached for me again, but I stepped back. I couldn't let her touch me, couldn't let her comfort erase my anger before I had a chance to fully feel it. We thought we were protecting you. The adoption was closed. We didn't know anything about your birth parents, and we thought that telling you would only hurt you, make you feel like you didn't belong. We wanted you to grow up feeling secure, feeling loved, feeling like you were exactly where you were meant to be, she explained, tears streaming down her face now. But I wasn't ready to forgive, wasn't ready to understand from her perspective. You don't get to decide what hurts me and what doesn't. You don't get to keep information about my own identity from me and call it protection. That's control, not love. I had a right to know where I came from, who I am. My voice cracked on the last words, the anger giving way to the grief underneath it. I was mourning the loss of my identity, the loss of the family I thought I had, even though they were all still standing right in front of me. The sound of a car in the driveway interrupted us. My father was home from work early, probably to help with party preparations. I heard his footsteps, his cheerful greeting as he entered through the garage. "Maggie, Charlotte, I'm home. How are my favorite girls?" He walked into the kitchen still smiling, loosening his tie, completely oblivious to the bomb that had just detonated. He saw my mother's tears first, then the folder in my hands, and I watched realization dawn across his features, just as it had with my mother. Charlotte found the adoption papers, my mother said quietly, and my father's face went pale. "I see, Charlotte. I think we should all sit down and talk about this calmly," he said, switching into the measured, rational tone he used when he was trying to manage a situation. The same voice he'd used when I was 16 and came home past curfew. When I was 23 and told them I was moving in with my boyfriend. Every time there was family drama that needed his diplomatic touch. "I don't want to sit down and talk calmly, Dad. Or should I even call you that? Are you my dad if we don't share DNA?" The question hung in the air, cruel and cutting, and I saw it land like a physical blow. My father's expression crumbled, and for the first time in my life I saw him look truly broken. "Don't say that. Don't ever say that. I'm your father in every way that matters. I was there when you took your first steps, when you lost your first tooth, when you had your heart broken for the first time. I taught you to ride a bike, helped you with your homework, walked you down the aisle at your wedding. DNA doesn't make someone a parent. Love does. Showing up does. And I have shown up for you every single day of your life." His voice was thick with emotion, and part of me wanted to run to him like I had when I was little, and he'd make everything better. But I couldn't. Not yet. "But you built all of that on a lie. Every single one of those memories is tainted now, because I know you were keeping this massive secret from me the whole time. How am I supposed to trust anything you say when you've been lying to me since the day you brought me home?" I was crying now, too. All three of us standing in the kitchen where we'd shared thousands of meals, where I'd done homework at the table, where we'd celebrated holidays and birthdays, and it all felt like a stage set now, the elaborate performance of family life that wasn't quite real. My father took a step toward me, then stopped, respecting my need for space. "You're right. We should have told you. We made a mistake, a terrible mistake, but it came from a place of love, not malice. When we lost Emma Grace, it nearly destroyed us. We were going to take her home. We had a nursery ready. We had dreams for her future. And then she was just gone. The grief was unbearable. When the opportunity came to adopt you so soon after, some people told us we were rushing, that we needed more time to grieve. But the moment I held you, I knew you were my daughter. Not a replacement, not a consolation prize, but my daughter. Then why not tell me that story? Why not be honest from the beginning?" I asked, my voice smaller now, the anger burning out and leaving only exhaustion in its wake. My mother spoke up, moving to stand beside my father, the two of them unified even in this moment of crisis. "Because we were scared. Scared you'd feel like you didn't belong. Scared you'd want to find your birth parents, and we'd lose you. Scared that knowing the truth would make you see yourself differently. We watched you grow up so confident, so secure in who you were, and we told ourselves we were doing the right thing by letting you keep that confidence. But we were wrong. We were selfish and wrong. And I'm so sorry, Charlotte. I'm so deeply sorry." Her apology felt genuine, but it didn't fix anything. It didn't give me back the version of myself I'd been that morning, before I knew the truth. "I need time. I need to process this. I'm going to go home, and I don't know when I'm going to be ready to talk to you again," I said, setting the folder down on the kitchen counter and grabbing my purse. My mother made a sound of protest. "What about the party? Your father's birthday is in 2 days. We can't cancel it now. Everyone's expecting—" "I don't care about the party!" I exploded, all that brief calm evaporating. "I don't care about seating charts or photo slideshows or pretending everything is fine when my entire world just imploded. You two can figure out the party. I'm leaving." I headed for the door, and this time my father called after me. "Charlotte, please, don't leave like this. We love you. Nothing about that has changed." I turned back one last time, looking at the two people I'd called Mom and Dad my entire life, seeing them with new eyes, as strangers who had made choices about my life without my knowledge or consent. Maybe nothing has changed for you, but everything has changed for me. I need to figure out who I am without you telling me who I'm supposed to be. I walked out, got in my car, and drove home on autopilot, my mind simultaneously racing and completely blank. When I got to my apartment, the one I shared with my husband, Marcus, I realized I had no idea how to tell him what I'd just learned. Marcus and I had been together for 6 years, married for 3, and he loved my family almost as much as I did. He was constantly telling me how lucky I was to have such a close-knit, supportive family, when especially since his own parents were distant and cold. How was I supposed to tell him that the family he admired so much had been living a lie? When he got home from his shift at the hospital, he was his usual cheerful self, talking about a patient who'd made a remarkable recovery, asking about my day with my mom. I must have looked like I had seen a ghost, because he immediately stopped talking and came to sit beside me on the couch. "Char, what's wrong? Did something happen with your parents?" His concern was so genuine, so pure, that I started crying again. I told him everything, the words tumbling out in a disjointed mess, the discovery in the attic, the confrontation in the kitchen, the adoption papers, and the dead baby sister I'd never known about. Marcus held me while I cried, didn't interrupt, just listened and let me get it all out. When I finally stopped talking, he was quiet for a long moment, processing. "That's a lot. That's really a lot, babe. How are you feeling?" he asked, always the practical one, the medical professional trained to assess and triage. "I don't know. Angry, betrayed, confused, all of the above. I just keep thinking about all these moments in my life where they could have told me, and didn't. When I was learning about genetics in high school, when I got married, when we started talking about having kids of our own, there were so many opportunities, and they chose to keep lying every single time." Marcus nodded, rubbing my back in slow circles the way he knew calmed me down. "I get why you're angry. They should have told you, but I also think, from what you've told me about losing Emma Grace, they were probably dealing with trauma they never fully processed. That doesn't excuse the lying, but it might explain it. Grief makes people do irrational things sometimes. But since when are you on their side?" I pulled away slightly, feeling defensive. "I'm not on anyone's side. I'm on your side, always. I just think this is more complicated than they're bad people who intentionally hurt you. They made a mistake, a big one. But it sounds like it came from fear and pain, not malice," he said carefully. "I need to find out who my birth parents are. I need to know where I came from, if I have other family out there, medical history, all of it. Richard and Margaret don't get to control that information anymore," I said, and even as the words came out, I felt a stab of guilt about calling my parents by their first names, but I needed the distance. Marcus squeezed my hand. "Okay, if that's what you need to do, I support you. But it might be a difficult process. If the adoption was closed, the records might be sealed. You might not be able to find much information. I have to try. I can't just go back to pretending everything is normal. I need answers." Over the next few days, I threw myself into research. I found out that the adoption agency Richard and Margaret had used had closed in the early 2000s, but their records had been transferred to another agency. I filled out request forms, paid fees, started the process of trying to unseal my adoption records. It was frustrating and slow, but it gave me something to focus on besides the hurt and anger. I ignored my mother's calls and texts, the increasingly desperate messages begging me to talk to them, to let them explain more fully, to please not miss my father's birthday party. Daniel called too, angry and confused. My mother had apparently told him and Emily what happened, and his message was curt. "Charlotte, what is going on? Mom and Dad are devastated. You need to talk to them. Whatever you're upset about, you're overreacting. Family is family." That message made me even angrier. Of course, Daniel would take their side. He was the biological son, the one who actually shared their DNA, the golden child who'd never questioned anything in his perfect life. Emily's approach was different. She showed up at my apartment with wine and Thai food 3 days after the discovery, letting herself in with the spare key I'd given her for emergencies. "Before you get mad that I'm here, I'm not leaving until we talk. Mom and Dad told us everything, and I think you have every right to be pissed." "I'm pissed too," she said, unpacking containers of pad Thai and setting them on my coffee table. I was surprised. "You're mad at them?" "Hell yes, I'm mad at them. They lied to you for almost 3 decades. That's insane. I understand why they did it, the grief and trauma and all that, but it was still wrong. You deserve to know the truth." Emily had always been the most emotionally honest of the three of us siblings, the one willing to call things what they were without sugarcoating. "Daniel thinks I'm overreacting," I said, sitting down and accepting the plate of food she handed me. I hadn't eaten properly in days. "Daniel is an idiot who's never had his worldview challenged in his entire life. Ignore him. This is about you and what you need, not about protecting Mom and Dad's feelings," Emily said firmly. We ate in companionable silence for a few minutes before she spoke again. "For what it's worth, you're still my sister. DNA doesn't change that. You're still the person who taught me how to do my makeup, who helped me through my breakup with Jason, who stayed up with me all night when I had food poisoning. That's real. That matters." Her words made me cry again, but these were different tears, grateful ones. "I know. I'm not mad at you or Daniel, even though he's being Daniel about this. I'm just trying to figure out who I am now that I know the truth. You're still Charlotte. You're still the organized one who makes color-coded lists, who cries at romantic comedies, who can't cook to save her life but tries anyway. You're still you. You just have more information now about where you came from," Emily said with the kind of simple wisdom that she sometimes surprised me with. "I'm trying to find my birth parents. I've started the process of unsealing the adoption records," I told her, watching for her reaction. She nodded slowly. "That makes sense. Do you know anything about them yet?" "Nothing. The adoption was completely closed. Richard and Margaret claim they don't know anything either, but I don't know if I believe them. They've been lying to me for 28 years. Why would they suddenly start telling the truth now?" The skepticism felt bitter in my mouth, but I couldn't help it. Trust, once broken, was hard to rebuild. "Will you go to Dad's party? It's tomorrow night. You don't have to stay long, but I think you should at least make an appearance. Show them you're still part of this family, even if things are complicated right now," Emily suggested gently. I shook my head. I can't. I can't stand there and pretend everything is fine in front of 100 people. I can't make small talk and smile for photos, like my entire foundation hasn't been ripped out from under me. Emily didn't push, just nodded and changed the subject, telling me about a new art commission she'd gotten, keeping things light and normal in a way I desperately needed. After she left, I felt slightly less alone, but still fundamentally untethered. I got a text from my mother late that night. "Charlotte, I know you're angry, and you have every right to be. But please know that every word we ever said about loving you, being proud of you, believing in you, was true. The lie was one of omission, not feeling. You are our daughter in every way that matters. We failed you by not being honest, but we never failed you in loving you. I'm here whenever you're ready to talk. I love you. Mom." I read it several times, wanting to feel softened by it, but still too raw. I didn't respond. The night of the party, I stayed home, feeling guilty but resolute. Marcus went to represent us, to make excuses about me having a stomach bug, to smooth things over the way I usually did. When he came back several hours later, he looked troubled. "It was rough. Your mom kept crying. Your dad looked like he'd aged 10 years, and people kept asking where you were." Daniel made some passive-aggressive comments about family loyalty, but Emily shut him down pretty effectively. He reported, sitting beside me on the couch. "Did anyone suspect the truth?" I asked. "No, I think everyone bought the stomach bug story. But Char, they're really torn up about this. I'm not saying you need to forgive them right now, but maybe eventually you could consider talking to them." Working toward some kind of resolution? Marcus suggested carefully. I will. Eventually. But not yet. Not until I have more answers. Those answers came 2 weeks later in the form of a packet from the adoption agency. My hands shook as I opened it, Marcus sitting beside me for moral support. Inside were documents, medical records, and a letter. My birth mother's name was Jennifer Holbrook. She'd been 17 years old when she had me, still in high school, from a small town about 200 miles away. The father wasn't listed, which wasn't uncommon in adoption cases. There was a medical history, both for Jennifer and her family, information about genetic predispositions and health conditions, and there was a letter she'd written when she placed me for adoption, to be opened if I ever came looking for her. My hands trembled as I unfolded the yellowed paper. Dear baby girl, I don't know if you'll ever read this, if you'll ever want to know about me. But I'm writing it anyway because I need you to know that giving you up is the hardest thing I've ever done. I'm 17. I'm scared. And I have no way to give you the life you deserve. Your father, well, that's complicated and not something I can explain in this letter. But I want you to know that I loved you from the moment I knew you existed. Every kick, every hiccup, every movement reminded me that you were real and you were mine, even though I knew I couldn't keep you. The letter went on for 2 pages, Jennifer explaining her circumstances, her hopes for me, her reasons for choosing adoption. She asked the adoptive parents to tell me she loved me, to tell me that I was wanted even if I wasn't kept, to tell me that not a day would go by that she wouldn't think about me. She included a P.O. box address, saying if I ever wanted to contact her, she'd keep it active for as long as she could. The letter was dated 28 years ago, just days after I was born. I was crying by the time I finished reading it, Marcus reading over my shoulder. She loved you. She didn't want to give you up, he said softly. Richard and Margaret never gave me this letter. They've had it all this time and never gave it to me. She wanted them to tell me she loved me, and they never did, I said, the betrayal cutting even deeper. Not only had they hidden the adoption, they'd hidden Jennifer's words, her love, her desire for me to know I was wanted. Maybe they didn't know how to give it to you without explaining everything else, Marcus offered, but even he sounded doubtful. Or maybe they were selfish. Maybe they wanted me to be completely theirs and didn't want to share me, even with a letter from a 17-year-old girl who gave me up so I could have a better life. I folded the letter carefully, protectively, my first tangible connection to where I'd come from. I immediately started trying to track down Jennifer Holbrook, the P.O. Box was long since closed, but with some internet sleuthing and a private investigator, Marcus helped me hire. I found her. She was living in Oregon, married with 3 kids, working as a nurse. The investigator asked if I wanted him to make contact on my behalf, or if I wanted to reach out myself. I decided to write her a letter, much like she'd written me one 28 years ago. Dear Jennifer, my name is Charlotte Anderson, though you knew me as the baby girl you placed for adoption in March 28 years ago. I only recently discovered I was adopted, and I've spent the last few weeks trying to find you. I read your letter, the one you wrote when I was born, and I wanted you to know that I've had a good life. I was raised by parents who loved me, even if they made mistakes. I'm married to a wonderful man. I'm a high school English teacher and I'm happy. But I'm also curious. I'd like to know you, if you're open to that. I'd like to hear your story, understand where I came from, and maybe build some kind of relationship if that's something you'd want to. I know this might be a shock, and I understand if you need time to process this. But if you're willing, I'd love to hear from you. Sincerely, Charlotte. I sent the letter to her home address, and then I waited. Waiting was torture. Every day I checked the mail, my email, my phone, hoping for a response. 2 weeks passed, then 3, and I started to think she wasn't going to respond. Maybe she'd moved on, buried that chapter of her life and didn't want it resurrected. Maybe my letter had caused her pain, reminded her of a traumatic time she'd rather forget. But then, 4 weeks after I sent the letter, I got an email. Charlotte, I have thought about you every single day for 28 years. I have 3 children, and I love them more than life itself. But there has always been a hole in my heart shaped like you. I would love nothing more than to meet you, to know you, to have you in my life in whatever capacity you're comfortable with. I'm sorry it took me a few weeks to respond. Your letter was a shock, a wonderful shock, but still a shock. I've been in therapy for years dealing with the trauma of giving you up, and I needed to talk to my therapist and my family before responding. They all know about you. I never hid you or pretended you didn't exist. You've always been my first baby, the one I think about every birthday, every Christmas, every Mother's Day. If you're open to it, I'd love to video chat first and then maybe arrange to meet in person. I live in Oregon, but I'd be willing to travel to you if that's easier. Thank you for finding me. Thank you for reaching out. You've given me a gift I never thought I'd receive. Love, Jennifer. I cried reading her email, Marcus holding me as I processed the overwhelming emotion of it all. We set up a video chat for the following weekend, and I was a nervous wreck leading up to it. What if we didn't have anything in common? What if it was awkward? What if she was disappointed in who I'd become? But the moment her face appeared on the screen, I saw my eyes looking back at me. I had her eyes, her nose, the same dimple in my left cheek. It was surreal and wonderful and terrifying all at once. "Charlotte," she breathed, her hand going to her mouth, tears already streaming down her face. "Hi, Jennifer," I managed to say, my own tears starting. We talked for 3 hours that first call, the conversation flowing easily despite the strangeness of the situation. She told me about her life, about meeting her husband David when she was in nursing school, about her 3 kids, Michael, Sarah, and Tommy, who were 15, 12, and 9. She showed me photos, and I saw my features reflected in my half-siblings' faces. She asked about my life, and I told her about Marcus, about teaching, about growing up in Connecticut, about discovering I was adopted. "Your parents never told you?" she asked, her expression darkening. I specified in my adoption plan that I wanted you to know you were adopted, that I wanted it to be an open conversation. The agency was supposed to ensure that. "They didn't tell me. They kept it hidden my entire life. I only found out by accident," I explained, still feeling the sting of that betrayal. Jennifer's jaw tightened. "That's not okay. That violates the terms of the adoption. I gave you up because I wanted you to have a better life than I could give you at 17. But I never wanted you to not know where you came from. I'm so sorry they did that to you." We talked about meeting in person, and we decided on a neutral location, a city halfway between us. I was excited and terrified in equal measure. I told Emily about Jennifer, about the upcoming meeting, and she was thrilled for me. "This is amazing, Char. You're getting answers. You're building a relationship with your birth mom. This is exactly what you needed." "I still haven't talked to Richard and Margaret," I admitted. "Maybe it's time. Maybe now that you have this other connection, this other piece of your identity, you're ready to work through things with them," Emily suggested. She wasn't wrong. I'd been avoiding them for over a month, which was the longest I'd ever gone without speaking to my parents. I missed them, despite everything. I missed my mother's laugh, my father's terrible jokes, the comfort of their presence. But I was still angry, still hurt. I decided to reach out, to try to bridge the gap that had opened between us. I sent a text to both of them. "I'm ready to talk if you are. Can we meet for coffee this weekend?" The response came within minutes. My mother: "Yes. Anytime, anywhere. Thank you for reaching out. We've missed you so much. I love you." We met at a small cafe near their house, the three of us sitting at a corner table away from other customers. My parents looked tired, older than I'd ever seen them, and I felt a pang of guilt for putting them through this, followed immediately by anger at myself for feeling guilty when they were the ones who'd lied to me. "Thank you for agreeing to meet with us," my father started, his voice formal and careful. "I found Jennifer, my birth mother. We've been talking, and we're going to meet in person next month," I said, watching their reactions. My mother's face crumpled, and my father looked like I'd slapped him. "You found her," my mother repeated, her voice small. "Did the agency give you the letter she wrote? The one you were supposed to give me when you told me I was adopted?" I asked, keeping my tone neutral but firm. They exchanged a glance, and my father nodded slowly. "We did. We kept it in the safe. We always meant to give it to you when we told you the truth, but you never told me the truth. So I never got the letter. She wanted me to know she loved me, that giving me up was hard for her, and you kept that from me too," I interrupted, the anger flaring again. "We were wrong." "Charlotte, we know we were wrong. We've been talking to a therapist, trying to understand why we made the choices we did, and we've come to realize that we were trying to control something we couldn't control. We were so afraid of losing you, of you choosing her over us, that we tried to make it impossible by never telling you she existed," my mother explained, tears rolling down her cheeks. "I'm not choosing her over you. This isn't a competition. But I needed to know where I came from. I needed to know my full story. And you kept that from me," I said, my voice breaking. "What can we do? Tell us what we can do to make this right," my father pleaded, reaching across the table but stopping short of touching my hand, respecting my boundaries in a way that made my heart ache. I took a deep breath, trying to organize my thoughts. "I need you to be honest with me from now on. Completely honest. No more secrets. No more protecting me from things you think will hurt me. I'm an adult, and I get to decide what I can handle. And I need you to understand that Jennifer is part of my life now. She's not replacing you, but she's important to me. And you need to be okay with that." My mother nodded frantically. "We can do that. We can absolutely do that. We want you in our lives, Charlotte. However that looks, whatever boundaries you need to set, we'll respect them. We just want our daughter back." "I'm still your daughter. I've always been your daughter. But I'm also Jennifer's daughter. I'm both, and I need you to accept that," I said, and saying it out loud felt like claiming my identity for the first time, owning all the pieces of who I was, instead of pretending some didn't exist. We talked for another hour, working through some of the hurt, establishing new boundaries, beginning the long process of rebuilding trust. It wasn't perfect, and there were moments where old resentments flared up. But it was a start. When I left the cafe, I felt lighter than I had in weeks, like I'd finally started to find solid ground again, after feeling like I was free-falling through space. The meeting with Jennifer happened on a crisp Saturday in November. Marcus came with me for support, driving the 4 hours to the restaurant we'd chosen in upstate New York. I was so nervous I felt nauseous, changing my outfit 3 times before we left, obsessing over what to say, how to act, whether she'd like me in person as much as she seemed to over video chat. When we walked into the restaurant, I saw her immediately. She was sitting at a table by the window, looking just as nervous as I felt, twisting a napkin in her hands. Our eyes met across the room, and it was like something clicked into place. A piece of me I hadn't known was missing suddenly found. I walked over and she stood up, and for a moment we just stared at each other. Two women connected by biology and circumstance, but strangers in every other way. Then she opened her arms and I stepped into them, and she held me the way I imagined she might have wanted to hold me 28 years ago when she had to give me away. "You're real. You're here. I can't believe you're here," she whispered into my hair, and I felt her tears on my neck. "I'm here. I'm real," I whispered back, my own tears flowing freely. We pulled apart, both of us laughing and crying at the same time, and she reached up to touch my face, like she was making sure I wasn't a dream. Marcus hung back, giving us our moment, but Jennifer noticed him and smiled. "You must be Marcus. Charlotte told me all about you. Thank you for supporting her through all of this." Marcus shook her hand warmly. "She's my whole world. Of course I'd support her." We sat down, and the conversation flowed even more easily in person than it had over video. Jennifer told me more about my biological father, a topic she'd been hesitant to discuss digitally. His name was Ryan Mitchell. He was the star quarterback. I was the quiet girl in the library. It was a classic story, really. We dated for a few months my junior year, and I thought I was in love. When I told him I was pregnant, he panicked. His family had money, reputation, college plans for him. They offered to pay for an abortion, and when I refused, they wanted nothing to do with me or you. Ryan went to college in California and never looked back. I heard he's a lawyer now, married with kids, living his best life while I spent years dealing with the trauma of giving up my baby. The bitterness in her voice was unmistakable, and I felt anger on her behalf, at this man who'd abandoned both of us. "Do you want to try to find him? To let him know about you?" Jennifer asked carefully. I thought about it for a moment, then shook my head. "Maybe eventually, but not right now. Right now, I'm focused on building a relationship with you. If he didn't want to be involved, then I'm not sure I want to force it now." Jennifer looked relieved. "I understand. And honestly, I think that's probably wise. He made his choice 28 years ago. You don't owe him anything." She showed me photos of my half-siblings, and the resemblance was striking. Michael had my chin, Sarah had my hair color, Tommy had my eyes. It was strange and wonderful to see my features reflected in these kids I'd never met. "They're so excited to meet you. I haven't told them exactly when yet because I wanted to make sure you were comfortable with it, but they've been asking about you constantly since I told them you'd reached out," Jennifer said, her face lighting up when she talked about her children. "I'd love to meet them. Maybe after we've had a few more visits, gotten to know each other better," I suggested, not wanting to rush but genuinely interested in connecting with these siblings I'd never known I had. "That sounds perfect. We can take this at whatever pace feels right for you." We talked about everything that day, medical history and family stories, her parents who had disowned her when she got pregnant, but eventually came around years later, her husband David who knew all about me and was supportive of her reconnecting with me. Hours flew by like minutes, and when we finally left the restaurant, the sun was setting, and my face hurt from smiling so much. Jennifer hugged me again before we parted ways. "Thank you for finding me. Thank you for giving me a chance. You've made me whole in a way I didn't think was possible anymore. Thank you for wanting to know me. For not running away when I showed up out of the blue," I replied, holding her tight. On the drive home, Marcus kept glancing over at me with a smile. "You look happy. Really happy." "I am. I feel like I finally understand who I am. I have Richard and Margaret, who raised me and loved me despite their mistakes. I have Jennifer, who gave me life and never stopped loving me, even from a distance. I have Emily and Daniel, and now Michael and Sarah and Tommy. I have you. I have this whole web of people who care about me, and I get to choose how to navigate those relationships instead of having my identity chosen for me." Over the following months, I worked on rebuilding my relationship with Richard and Margaret, while also deepening my connection with Jennifer. It wasn't always easy. There were moments when my mother would get jealous if I mentioned Jennifer. Times when I felt guilty for hurting my parents, even though I knew I had a right to know my birth mother. Jennifer was incredibly respectful of my relationship with Richard and Margaret, always emphasizing that she wasn't trying to replace them, that she was grateful they'd given me the life she couldn't provide. The first time all of them were in the same room together was at Christmas that year. I decided to host at my and Marcus's apartment, a neutral territory where everyone could meet without the baggage of anyone's home turf. I was terrified it would be a disaster, that my two mothers would clash, or that the tension would be unbearable. But something unexpected happened. Margaret and Jennifer connected. They talked about me, about motherhood, about the impossible decisions parents have to make. I overheard my mother thanking Jennifer for giving me life, and Jennifer thanking my mother for giving me a childhood full of love and stability. They cried together, these two women who loved me in different ways, finding common ground in that love. Richard was more reserved, but even he warmed up as the evening went on, especially when Jennifer's husband David started talking to him about golf, and they discovered a shared interest. Emily came with her new girlfriend. Daniel brought his wife and kids. And suddenly my living room was full of people. Multiple branches of my family tree intertwining in ways that felt messy and complicated and absolutely perfect. As I looked around the room that night, watching everyone laugh and talk and exist together in this space I'd created, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't experienced since before I found those adoption papers in the attic. I'd spent months feeling like I was choosing between identities, between families, between versions of myself. But the truth was, I didn't have to choose. I could be Charlotte Anderson, raised by Richard and Margaret, loved by Emily and Daniel, married to Marcus, and also be Charlotte, Jennifer's first baby, the one she never forgot, big sister to Michael and Sarah and Tommy. I could hold all of these identities at once, could honor all of these relationships without diminishing any of them. The journey of discovering I was adopted had broken something in me, shattered my sense of self and my understanding of my place in the world. But in the rebuilding, I'd constructed something stronger, something more authentic, something that belonged entirely to me instead of being built on someone else's choices and secrets. I'd learned that family isn't just about blood or about who raises you. It's about who shows up, who stays, who does the work of loving you even when it's hard. Richard and Margaret had made terrible mistakes, but they'd also shown up for me every day of my life, and they were still showing up now, doing the hard work of earning back my trust. Jennifer had never stopped loving me, had carried me in her heart for 28 years, and now she was showing up too, building a relationship with patience and grace. And all of my siblings, biological and not, were showing up in their own ways, supporting me through the chaos, reminding me that I wasn't alone. A few weeks after Christmas, I got a call from the private investigator I'd hired. He'd found Ryan Mitchell, my biological father, and he'd done some digging into his background. Ryan was indeed a successful lawyer in San Diego, married with 2 kids, living exactly the kind of privileged life Jennifer had described. The investigator asked if I wanted him to make contact, to let Ryan know I existed and wanted to meet him. I thought about it for a long time, talked it over with Marcus, with Jennifer, even with Richard and Margaret. Everyone had opinions, but they all emphasized that it was my choice, my life, my right to decide whether I wanted this man in it. In the end, I decided to reach out, not because I needed him, not because I was looking for another father figure, but because I wanted to know the full story, wanted to understand all the pieces of where I came from. I wrote him a letter similar to the one I'd written Jennifer, explaining who I was, how I'd found him, and that I was interested in meeting if he was open to it. His response came faster than I expected, but it wasn't what I'd hoped for. "Charlotte, I received your letter, and I want to be clear from the outset that I am not interested in pursuing a relationship. What happened between Jennifer and me was a mistake from my youth, one that I've moved past. I have a family now, a wife and children who know nothing about you, and I'd like to keep it that way. I understand you're curious about your origins, but I cannot be a part of your life. I wish you well, but please do not contact me again. Ryan Mitchell." The rejection stung more than I'd expected. Even though I'd told myself I didn't need him, having him explicitly refuse to know me felt like a wound reopening. I showed the letter to Jennifer during one of our regular video calls, and she was furious on my behalf. That coward. That absolute coward. He gets to pretend you don't exist, gets to protect his perfect little life while you're dealing with the fallout of his choices. I'm so sorry, Charlotte. You deserved better from him. It's okay. I mean, it's not okay, but I'll be okay. I have you, and I have Richard and Margaret, and I have Marcus. I don't need him, I said, trying to convince myself as much as her. You're right. You don't need him. But it's okay to be hurt by this. It's okay to grieve the relationship you might have had. He's the one missing out, not you. You're incredible, and if he can't see that, that's his loss. Jennifer's words helped, as did the support from everyone else in my life. Marcus held me while I cried that night, angry tears at the unfairness of it all, at how Ryan got to walk away, consequence-free, while Jennifer had carried the weight of giving me up for nearly 3 decades. But eventually, I made peace with it. Some people don't deserve to be in your life, and that's okay. You can't force someone to love you, to want to know you, to do the work of being a parent. Ryan had made his choice long ago, and he'd confirmed it again now. That was his burden to carry, not mine. As spring arrived and I approached my 29th birthday, I found myself reflecting on the year that had passed since I'd discovered I was adopted. It had been the hardest year of my life, full of betrayal and anger and confusion, but it had also been a year of growth, of discovering who I was beyond the labels other people had given me, of claiming my own identity and building the family structure that worked for me, rather than accepting the one I'd been given. I'd learned that secrets, even ones kept with good intentions, can do more damage than the truth ever would. I'd learned that love isn't about biology or about who was there first, but about who stays, who fights for you, who does the messy work of relationship even when it's uncomfortable. I'd learned that you can be angry at someone and still love them, that forgiveness is a process, not a destination, and that rebuilding trust takes time and patience and consistent effort from everyone involved. Most importantly, I'd learned that my identity wasn't something that could be given to me or taken away by anyone else. It was mine to define, mine to explore, mine to understand and claim and own. I was Charlotte, teacher and wife and daughter and sister and friend, complicated and messy and still figuring things out, but finally, completely, authentically myself. On my birthday, both of my families came together again, this time at a restaurant we'd all agreed on. Margaret had made me a photo album, filled with pictures from my childhood, alongside new photos from the past year. Moments with Jennifer and her family, interwoven with moments with Richard and Margaret. It was her way of acknowledging that my story included all of these people, that my life was richer for having multiple sources of love. Jennifer gave me a necklace with a pendant that had both of our birthstones, a symbol of the connection we'd forged over the past year. I've thought about you every birthday for 29 years, wondered where you were, who you'd become, if you were happy. Getting to actually celebrate with you this year is the greatest gift I could ever receive, she said as she fastened it around my neck. Richard and Margaret gave me a letter, one they'd written together, finally putting into words everything they'd been feeling and working through over the past year. I read it later that night, in the quiet of my apartment after everyone had gone home. Dear Charlotte, there are no words sufficient to express how sorry we are for the pain we have caused you. We made decisions out of fear and grief, and in doing so, we robbed you of the right to know your full story. We thought we were protecting you, but we've come to understand that we were protecting ourselves, trying to pretend that losing Emma Grace hadn't broken us in ways we didn't know how to fix. You are not a replacement for Emma Grace. You never were. You are Charlotte, unique and wonderful, and entirely your own person, and we love you for exactly who you are. Watching you this past year, seeing you navigate this impossible situation with grace and strength and courage, has made us more proud of you than anything else you've ever done. You could have walked away from us, cut us out of your life completely, and we would have deserved it. But instead, you've chosen to do the hard work of rebuilding, of letting us earn back your trust. And we don't take that for granted. We know that Jennifer is part of your life now, and we want you to know that we support that relationship completely. She gave you life, and for that, we will always be grateful to her. We gave you a childhood, and we hope that, despite our failures, you can look back on it with some fondness. Together, all of us who love you, we've given you a family that's complicated and imperfect and sometimes messy, but always rooted in love. Thank you for being our daughter. Thank you for teaching us what unconditional love really means. Thank you for showing us that family isn't about perfection. It's about showing up even when it's hard. We love you more than words can express. Mom and Dad. I cried reading their letter, but these were healing tears, not angry ones. The wound was still there. Would probably always be there in some form. But it was closing, scarring over, becoming part of my story instead of the defining feature of it. Marcus found me on the couch, tears streaming down my face, clutching the letter. He sat beside me and pulled me close. Good tears or bad tears? He asked. Both, all of them. Every kind of tear, I said with a watery laugh. That tracks for you, he teased gently. Are you okay? Really okay? Yeah, I think I actually am. For the first time in a year, I feel like I'm okay. Not perfect, not all the way healed, but okay. Like I can see the path forward now instead of just feeling lost in the dark. Marcus kissed my forehead. I'm proud of you. You've handled this whole situation with more maturity and grace than most people would have. You could have let this destroy you, destroy your family. But instead, you've used it to build something new and stronger. I had good support. I had you, I said, snuggling closer to him. Always. You've always got me, he promised. As I drifted off to sleep that night, I thought about everything that had changed, and everything that had stayed the same. I thought about how a single discovery in an attic had upended my entire world, how learning the truth about my adoption had felt like the end of everything I'd known. But it hadn't been the end. It had been a beginning, the start of a journey toward understanding myself more fully, toward building relationships based on honesty and choice, rather than obligation and secrets. I thought about Emma Grace, the sister I'd never known, the baby who died and in some ways made room for me to join this family. I'd visited her grave a few months back with Richard and Margaret, placed flowers and said a silent thank you to a little girl I'd never met, but who'd shaped my life in ways I was only beginning to understand. I thought about Jennifer at 17, scared and alone, making the hardest decision of her life because she loved me enough to give me a chance at something better. I thought about Richard and Margaret, grieving and broken, choosing to adopt me and love me even though they did it imperfectly. I thought about all the versions of myself that existed across these relationships, how I was slightly different with each person but still fundamentally me, how understanding my origins hadn't changed who I was, but had added depth and context to that identity, and I realized that this was the real gift of discovering I was adopted, not the pain or the betrayal or the anger, but the opportunity to choose my own story, to decide for myself what family meant and who got to be part of mine. I didn't have to accept the narrative others had written for me. I could write my own, including all the messy, complicated, beautiful pieces that made up the whole of who I was. The truth is, we all have secrets in our families, stories that get hidden or edited or conveniently forgotten. Mine just happened to be bigger than most, a fundamental lie about my very existence that had been maintained for nearly 3 decades. But discovering that lie had forced everyone in my family to reckon with their choices, to be honest about their motivations, to do the hard work of building real relationships instead of ones based on assumption and avoidance. If you're watching this, and you've ever discovered something that changed everything you thought you knew about your family, I want you to know you're not alone. The shock and betrayal and confusion you're feeling are valid. The anger is justified. The grief for the person you thought you were is real and important. But I also want you to know that it gets better. Not easier, necessarily, but better. You get to decide what to do with the information you've discovered. You get to set boundaries, demand honesty, build relationships that work for you. You get to define what family means on your own terms. And if you're someone who's been keeping secrets, thinking you're protecting the people you love, I'm begging you to reconsider. The truth always comes out eventually, and the damage from the lie is almost always worse than the damage from the truth would have been. Give the people you love the respect of honesty. Trust them to handle difficult information. Let them know their full story so they can decide who they want to be instead of having that decided for them. My journey isn't over. I'm still navigating relationships with 2 mothers, still working through layers of complicated feelings, still discovering new things about myself and where I come from. But I'm doing it from a place of truth now, standing on solid ground instead of a foundation of lies. And that makes all the difference. So if this story resonated with you, if you've experienced something similar, or if you're keeping secrets you're not sure how to reveal, leave a comment below. Tell me your story. Let's start a conversation about family secrets, adoption, identity, and what it means to really know where you come from. And if you found value in hearing about my journey, please consider subscribing to this channel and hitting that like button. I'll be sharing more about my ongoing relationships with both of my families, the process of connecting with my half-siblings, and how Marcus and I are navigating all of this as we start thinking about having kids of our own, and what that means for family history and identity moving forward. The comment section is a safe space for everyone to share their experiences, their questions, their own stories of family secrets and discoveries that changed everything. I read every comment, and I respond to as many as I can, because I know how isolating it can feel when your family situation is complicated in ways most people don't understand. You're not alone in this. There are thousands of us out there, navigating complex family dynamics, multiple parental relationships, and identities that don't fit neatly into the boxes society expects. Let's support each other through it. Thank you for watching, for listening to my story, for being part of this community. Remember, your identity is yours to define, your story is yours to tell, and your family is whoever shows up and does the work of loving you, regardless of biology or circumstance. Until next time, this is Charlotte, reminding you that sometimes the families we choose are just as important as the families we're born into, and sometimes discovering the truth about where you came from is the first step toward understanding where you're going. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment. I'll see you in the next video.